Coming up on this episode, a few things that I need to get off my chest from a Warrior perspective. We'll talk a little bit about Friday's loss against the Oklahoma City Thunder, another heartbreaker in overtime there. Which Warrior veterans are most likely to be dealt before February's mid-season trade deadline? And a former Warrior takes an unnecessary and blatantly disrespectful shot at Klay Thompson. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast on a Tuesday morning for me. Looking forward to getting into some NBA action here again after a day off. Of course, we had the in-season tournament over the weekend with the Los Angeles Lakers getting the victory over the Indiana Pacers. Care factor wasn't too high. I do find it a bit comical. I'm getting all these notifications from Shams and other reporters stating that the Lakers are going to hang a banner. Good on them. I wouldn't necessarily want the Warriors to hang a banner. I don't think many Lakers fans want them to. We're in the business of winning NBA championships, and I don't think the NBA Cup at this point is worthy of hanging a banner at Crypto.com Arena. But congratulations to them, whatever it means. Well done. And we'll just move forward with the season. We've got some regular season action kicking off here in about an hour and a half's time. For me right now, you'll see that I'm wearing, or for those on the YouTube episode of this rather than the podcast version, we'll be seeing I'm wearing a Warrior singlet at the moment. Of course, for me in Australia here, it's coming to summer. So beautiful 25-degree day at the moment, which I think is like 75, 80 Fahrenheit. So very nice, enjoying the hot weather at the moment, but actually coming to Los Angeles in about a month's time, 15th of January. I'm heading over there. So looking forward to it. Hopefully the weather is okay. Obviously it'll be winter time in America, but thoroughly looking forward to that. Anyway, let's get into some Warrior chat here. Of course, last game, had a few days off. Friday night in Oklahoma City was the last appearance for the Warriors, and another heartbreaking loss. I mean, it's just becoming inevitable at this stage. Of course, Steph Curry, go-ahead step-back three with, about 17 seconds on the clock, only for Draymond Green to commit one of the worst fouls I think he would have ever committed in his career. Now, Draymond is one of the smartest defenders in the history of the game, and so for him to not even just the foul, but the gamble to try and steal the ball on that inbounds pass, that was the first major mistake. And then he obviously tried to turn around and foul Chet. Like, that was the plan. They were obviously nervous and scared after Chet hit that buzzer-beating three to force overtime back on the November 18 matchup at Chase Center. Wanted to take the different option this time around, and it equally worked out as badly. Dre fouls Chet. Chet catches the ball, goes up straight away. Clever stuff by him. It's a three-point shooting foul. Goes to the line, sinks 3 free throws. Steph unable to hit a game winner at the buzzer on the other end. And from that point, going into overtime, you just knew the Warriors were going to lose. Not only because of the soul-crushing way that regulation ended again, where they were in position, prime position to win, but also the fact that overtime record now is just appalling. They've won 3 of their last 20 overtime games. How does that happen for a team that has won 4 NBA championships in the last decade, who has, some of the most, championship-proven players in the league with Steph, with Dre, and with Klay Thompson? And yet, in the last 20 overtime games, it's becoming inevitable that they just lose. And this one, I mean, they only lost by 2 in the end. The final score was, 138, 136. But the Thunder got out to a 10-point lead early in that overtime in the first 2 or 3 minutes. And from there, they had a little mini fight back, I suppose, led by Steph. But, they were never really threatening to win that game at the end. So the 2-point margin, I suppose, was probably friendly to them by the end. I guess they should have won the game in regulation, but I thought the overtime was a lot more one-sided than the 2-point margin would suggest. The Dre foul, as I said, just incredibly silly. And this is the issue here with some of these late game situations where the Warriors have now lost 6 games by 4 points or less. And that doesn't include the Holmgren buzzer beater on November 18, where the Thunder eventually won by 7 in overtime. So that's 7 games here out of 22 that, I mean, you've got to be winning at least half of these. Some of them include the Kings and the Clippers matches from, a couple of weeks ago, last week, or the week before, whatever it was, where they were up by 22 and 24 points during those games, and then went down by a point. So some of these games you just have to win. And again, I always say if you go 4-3 in those games, right, 4-3, then all of a sudden instead of having a 10-12 record, you've got a 14-8 record. That's incredible. That is genuinely incredible. They could be 14-8 right now and fourth in the conference, and yet 10-12, 11th in the conference, and really pushing shit uphill, basically. So we're still a quarter of the way into the season, as Klay Thompson says. There's still 60 games to go, so there's plenty of time. But they're going to have to try and get their stuff together, and it's what's most frustrating at the moment is they're beating themselves, and that is also providing some optimism and a glass half full approach, which Bob Myers said on NBA Countdown. He kind of said it's fine. They're beating themselves. There's not too many dominant teams in the West right now, which I tend to agree with. I think I spoke about it on my last episode with Liev and Dimani. We kind of spoke about it. The Nuggets, to me, I know they're struggling a little bit. Their record isn't great. I think they're 14-9. They are still the best team in the conference for me, and I think they will be the whole regular season. And then you got three teams up the top, with Minnesota leading the way 17-4. You've got the Oklahoma City Thunder, who the Warriors have lost to 3 times, but should have beaten 3 times. They won one, obviously that layup from Steph in OKC in the first matchup. Should have won the 2 overtime games, should have won those in regulation. So the Thunder are a very, very good team, and the Warriors should have gone 3 or 4. But, at the end of the day, should have, could have, would have. It doesn't really matter. The final result is an L in those games. And then you got the Dallas Mavericks as well, who, I still have question marks defensively. I like what Derek Lively II's doing. He, would have been a fantastic pickup for the Warriors. I remember doing some, kind of pre-draft work, and there was a lot of talk about Lively potentially getting to the Warriors pick, at 19, but then he kind of the last couple of weeks before the draft really shot up and ended up getting taken 10 or 12 by the Mavericks. So he's been really good. I still have question marks on rookie centers in the playoffs. I'm not sure how effective he's going to be there and how effective Dallas's defense is going to be come playoff time. So none of these teams are formidable. All these teams I still think have question marks. The Thunder, their lack of experience come playoff time. I still have question marks on the Cat-Gobert combination come playoff time, although the defensive work of the Timberwolves so far has been fantastic. So there is a chance here for the Warriors. And as I said to Lee on last episode, I still think there's a way that the Warriors can do take a similar path to what the Lakers did last season, where they obviously started out really badly and were able to come through and end up getting to the Western Conference Finals. And sure, they got swept, but it was actually a lot of those games were close against the Nuggets, so the Lakers weren't too far away. So there's plenty of time here, and I think the Warriors, there's still a chance, and it does provide some optimism in the fact that they're beating themselves. That Draymond foul, 28 freaking turnovers, easily. I think the NBA season record was 25 before that for the season so far. So they've beaten it by 3. Just appalling, just horrific. And the fact that they should have won that game regardless is quite extraordinary. So they're doing a lot of good stuff. I'll get on to some of the positives. Steph's last few minutes and overtime were fantastic. He actually didn't play overly well before that. I thought the Warriors, the bench was pretty good. Dario, JK, I wanted to mention, has he turned a corner here in the last couple of games? It's like the last 2 games have really been kind of a characterization of JK's career to date, where obviously in that Portland matchup last Wednesday, it was American time, he's out of the rotation completely in the first half. A diabolical decision from Steve Kerr, because in the second quarter I'm watching almost a 4-guard lineup with Chris Paul, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, Klay Thompson. Now you can call Klay and Moody threes, I suppose, but that lineup was just way too small, particularly when you got Dario at the 5 as well. Like, he's not doing much in terms of any interior defense. So I hated that lineup. I think you need to have JK on the floor in the rotation at all times, simply because you lack athletic 2-way forwards. So I'm very thankful and glad he finally got his opportunity, with 4 or 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Unbelievable that it took to that point. But the Warriors, they were nearing disaster there. They were down 10, 11 points to the Trailblazers in that game. JK plays the final 17 minutes practically and has 13 points, helps revive a Golden State victory there that was, desperately required, and looked like it was going to be, an absolute disaster at one point. So that was great. And then the game against the Thunder was a encapsulation of some of his good stuff and some of his bad stuff. Like, he has a season high 24 points, makes a couple of threes, gets to the rim a few times, takes 21 field goal attempts, which was a career high. That's incredible in a game that had, Steph, and it had Klay, and it had Wiggs. Like, 21 field goal attempts in, he played nearly 29 minutes, which again is good. He had a career high 12 rebounds as well. So 2 career highs there in terms of field goal attempts and rebounds. And of course, the season high 24 points. The Warriors really smashed the Thunder on the boards. I think it was 60-39 overall. And I think it was like 26 offensive rebounds, which is unbelievable. Saric and JK, 6 of his 12 boards were on the offensive end. So, you had all that, which was positive, and then you had the fact that, he fouled out in overtime, so there's still foul issues there. And he was also a team low -15 in the ball game. So just that 2-game sample, just an encapsulation of JK's career so far. And, has he turned a corner in the back of these last, the last game and a half, the second half against the Blazers and the game against the Thunder? I mean, I'm not going to be reading too much into it. It's positive, no doubt. It's positive. But we've seen this too many times where he kind of floats in and out of games. He has good games here. He has good games there, but he also mixes that with, plenty of negative stuff that ultimately leads to Steve not being able to trust him too much. And, we saw, again, out of the rotation against the Trailblazers, which was a mistake on Steve's behalf, but, it is what it is. And fortunately, he got his opportunity in the second half through the circumstance of the Warriors really struggling and, Golden State needing his energy. So that was, fortunate. And then he took advantage of it, no doubt. So well done to him. And, he had I think a good game against the Thunder, all things considered. So hopefully from a Warrior perspective, I just think he's so important. And I think the Warriors lack, athletic two-way forwards. They lack the size and athleticism and speed to, guard some of these teams, these young teams like the Thunder, who are really explosive. And that's why I think JK is just so important. And, for the whole season, I've been saying, you need to let him play through some of his mistakes, because what he can bring for you in a positive light is so crucial. So, I'm not going to be saying he's turned a corner here and that all of a sudden we're going to see JK average 15 plus points for the rest of the season and play 20, 25 minutes every game. But there's some positivity there over the last game and a half, no doubt. On the negative side, Andrew Wiggins. I mean, I think there is times here where I think to myself, he's coming back around, he's getting back to some form. And then all of a sudden it just disappears, and it's actually worse than what it was previously. So that first quarter against the Thunder, Warriors limited the Thunder to 19 points, had 8 turnovers themselves. So they led by 9, but if you don't have the turnover issues, they could have led by any old number after that first quarter. And it was really down. Wiggins' defense on Shea was really good. Shea went 2 of 8 shooting in the first quarter, 4 points, and Wiggs had 8 points himself on 3 of 5 shooting. Made a couple of threes, had a nice tornado move and layup over Isaiah Joe. Really good first quarter. Probably one of his best quarters of the season. One of the Warriors' best quarters of the season outside of the turnover issues. And then for the rest of the game, he proceeds to have more turnovers than points. 5 turnovers, 6 turnovers for the game. A guy that, with his usage or lack of usage, is more of an off-ball player. How the hell do you have 6 turnovers? Like, that is horrifically bad. And so 5 turnovers in the last final 3 periods plus overtime, and he has 4 points. Has 8 points after the first quarter, ends the game with 12 points on 4 of 11 shooting. Makes 1 of 6 field goal attempts. I don't get it. I don't get how you can have that lack, not only that lack of production from a scoring standpoint and only taking 6 field goal attempts, but how do you turn the ball over 6 times in the game? You're not a point guard or anything. So I think he has, someone tweeted out the other day, I can't remember what the numbers were, but he has like significantly more turnovers and assists this season, which is just, again, you think he might be turning things around. He started making his threes recently, had that 29, 31 point games, and then he just delivers something like that in the final 3 quarters and overtime, to the point where in the overtime, Brandon Pajemski subbed in for him, and Steve closed with JK and Pajemski over Wiggins, and it wasn't until JK fouled out with a minute to go that Wiggs came back on. That's a real indictment to him, the fact that he was an all-star less than 2 years ago, and now you have Jonathan Kuminga and particularly a rookie in Brandon Pajemski closing over you. That's a real issue. That is a major issue. So I want to kind of dive in here a little bit to, what are the Warriors going to do? We're less than 2 months now to the February trade deadline. So what are the Warriors going to do? What can they do? So anything, obviously, in terms of trying to get a star level player. The 2 big needs right now are secondary scorer behind Steph, and I still think Wiggs and Klay can be that or some version of that on any given night. But ideally, you want someone consistently. You want someone who you can bank and say, he's getting us 20 tonight. He's getting us 20. And unfortunately, you just can't do that with Klay and Wiggs right now. Klay, I thought, played okay against the Thunder. He still has these like jarringly bad decisions sometimes in terms of passes or shot selection or whatever, which I think leads to fans, that kind of imprints in their memory, and at the end of the game they're like, "Oh, Klay played horrific. Didn't play well at all." But he actually, what do you have? 22 points on fairly efficient shooting. Like, he was okay. But the Warriors clearly need a secondary scorer. That's the whole point. They also, I think, need another forward in there. I think we've been saying there's a hole there in terms of their best lineup. Is it Looney and Dre at the front at the 4 and the 5? No, it's not. So who is it? Is it Saric? Well, I think you're giving up plenty defensively there. Are you going super small with Chris Paul? Is it Moody? Is it Kuminga? What's the Warriors' best lineup? Well, to me, their best lineup is probably having someone that's not currently on the team. Now we can think about options there. Siakam. My man is Larry Markkinen. Larry Markkinen would be the perfect acquisition for this team. I would do anything to get my hands on Larry Markkinen. I think in a Larry Markkinen trade, everyone but Steph and Dre would probably be available. However, which player is most likely to be given up here? Because obviously, to get a star level player, to get a guy that can be a secondary scorer for you to fill another forward spot, you need to be giving up one of these big contracts. Now, it's either clearly going to be Klay, who's making $43.2 million. It's either going to be him, it's going to be Chris Paul, who's on $30.8 million, or it's going to be Wiggs, who's on, I think, $24.3. One of those 3. Unless you can manage to find a way to get Markkinen, who's only on $17-18 million this season, by giving up some other contracts. I don't think the Warriors are going to be giving up Loon or Gary Payton II, who are a couple of players who are making between that $7.5 and $9 million range, kind of mid-sized salaries. I don't think they're going to be doing that. So it's going to be one of these big salaries, and of course, depending on who it is, they're going to have to attach the young assets: Kuminga, Moody, Pajemski, Jackson Davis, some combination of them, and obviously future picks. So, who is most likely to be traded in the next couple of months? I still have Chris Paul ahead of Klay and Wiggs. Reason being is that I think he's still surplus to requirements. He's a backup point guard behind Steph. He's been quite good, I think. I've had no real issues with how he has played so far this season. Obviously, the leg injury and the illness that kept him out of Friday's game hurts, and that's probably going to continue to happen as a 38-year-old in his 19th season. But I've got no issues with Chris Paul and how he's played for the Warriors this season. I think he's been, the numbers would show, yes, his individual numbers are down, no doubt, but I think the numbers would show that the Warriors are a better team when he's on the floor. However, I still don't think that having him alongside, Klay and Wiggs and Dre and Steph, obviously, I still don't think that's a lineup that you want to be going to in crunch time. I think it's too small, gives up too much defensively and too much rebounding wise. So he's still the one for me, and especially with Podziemski. So assuming you keep Podziemski in any deal you make, he's already shown the ability to be a quality backup guard in this league. Now, Steve can, work out whether or not he's comfortable with having him run the second unit as, the lead ball handler and playmaker off the bench. But if that's not now, then I think it's at least next season. And so CP3 is probably going to be off the team come the offseason anyway. So I think he's still the one now that is most surplus to requirements. His role is less needed than what Wiggs is, especially with him and the defense that he brings. Also, the fact that CP3 still makes over $6 million more than Wiggs does, which is significant. And then Klay, obviously, I think Klay's role is still important just because of the sheer shooting threat that he provides. And this is what I've said all season, is that even when he's not making shots, teams are still guarding him. And that is still, a bonus. And that threat is still a huge factor for the Warriors in their offense. So I think Klay still plays an important role. And also the fact, I just don't think the Warriors will trade Klay. And I hope they don't, because, I'm a big fan of Klay and I never want to see him on another team. And you know what? All the criticism that he's getting right now, I can tell you a lot of that criticism is coming from the fact that he's making $43.2 million. If he's putting up this similar production next season and he's making less than $20 million, it's fine. It's genuinely fine. If he's averaging 15 points a game, shooting high 30s from three, it's fine. It's fine. Now, he's going to be better than this. He's going to be better. He's going to be better as the season goes along. I have no doubt about that. He always starts seasons slow. So I don't think they'll trade him. Because I also think that obviously any Klay decision would come down to what Steph and Dre have to say as well. And I have a hard time thinking that they would want to move on Klay. Unless you are getting a genuine superstar in return. Like a guy that, he's a top 15 player in the league. I can tell you what, Markkanen is not a top 15 player in the league. I know I just said before that, I'd give up anyone for Markkanen outside of Steph and Dre. You can probably add Klay to the list. I just don't think the legacy of Klay Thompson, I think, does mean more than boosting your championship opportunities or chances by 3 or 4%. Now, if you're getting a superstar top 15 player who's boosting your championship chances by 10, 15%, yeah, maybe. But not for someone like Markkanen, not for someone like Siakam, certainly not for anyone like Anunoby. Like those two players, I know like Warrior fans are super interested. I'm not, because they're on expiring deals. Do I want, and they're not good enough to be worth giving up. Like, what, you're going to give up Chris Paul, Kuminga, Moody, and picks for 2 months of Siakam potentially? No, no. Like, he could, and like, even if his management was giving assurances, oh yeah, we'll re-sign, no doubt about that. Anything could happen. So I'm not doing that. I'm certainly not doing it for Anunoby. He's just not good enough. He's not enough of a difference maker to be worth it. I don't think Siakam's enough of a difference maker either. He's not a top 15 player in the league. And so when you're talking about these guys who can be free agents in the offseason and could potentially leave for nothing, I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. So, yeah, who else is available? Like, I heard on the latest podcast with Anthony Slater, not the latest one, but a couple of episodes ago on Warriors Plus Minus with Anthony Slater, Marcus Thompson, Tim Kawakami. They were discussing the potential of Zach LaVine. No, just no. Like, that contract is going to age horrifically badly. Just no. So I just don't know if there's anyone available. I don't, because again, I'd need to give up Klay. I need a top 15 player. I'm happy to give up CP3 and maybe one or two of the young guys and future picks if it's getting, a top 30 player or something like that, like Siakam and Markin and probably are and whatever else, like that's fine. But again, Siakam expiring contract. Like I'm not sure that's actually worth it. I kind of contradicted myself there. If Siakam's under contract for a couple more years, fine, no worries. But that's obviously a big, and it's going to be a big thing for the Raptors as well, because they've got to acknowledge that they're probably not going to get what they want out of Siakam and Anunoby, with the fact that teams are going to be scared off by the fact they can be free agents and they're on expiring deals. That's what it is. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to speak about, and on the Klay topic, is very little in this world that makes me genuinely mad or disappointed. Like, I'm pretty kind of level-headed. Don't get too up and about with much. Don't get too low on stuff. Just try to keep a pretty flat line of emotion, right? These Gilbert Arenas comments on Klay that I woke up to yesterday made me genuinely mad and really disappointed. And I felt sad. I felt sad for Gilbert Arenas more than anything, because I don't understand. Like, I'm a nobody, and I'm the one, and there's plenty of other people who do random podcasts or whatever else who are absolute nobodies. We are the ones that should be having horrifically, wildly inaccurate hot takes or painting wrong pictures or whatever for attention, to try and garner attention. That's what we do in the media a lot, and it's unfortunate, but that's what happens. And I try to steer clear of it, but I understand that people want to try and get attention. Gilbert Arenas, you don't need attention. You're a big name former NBA player who's got a fantastic podcast and show. There is no need for you to be making wildly inaccurate and blatantly disrespectful statements. And I always look at these things from a historical perspective. And I think we, as people talking about the game, and regardless of who it is, like I'm going to be talking about this period of basketball to my grandkids or whatever in 50 years' time, I owe it to them, and I owe it to people now, and NBA players owe it to fans now, to paint the game in the most honest light that they can. And yes, there is going to be different perspectives on everything, but to me, what Gilbert Arenas said yesterday was objectively wrong and painting a completely untrue narrative of Klay Thompson's career. And that is doing a disrespect to Klay, and it's doing a disrespect to the game to not inform fans of a previous era. And what we're talking about is, Klay pre-injury, right? And there are going to be a lot of young fans who have just got into basketball, maybe post-COVID or whatever, 2020 onwards, who have followed the game for the last 3 or 4 years, and they didn't live Klay Thompson, before that, right? So you have a duty, I think, as anyone talking about the game, to try and speak about it and try and tell stories or narratives in the most honest and most truthful way you can. And so, to me, Gilbert Arenas just lied. Flat out lied. Now, he obviously believes it. That's fine. But he's objectively wrong. So this is what he said, in case people missed it. He said, somebody like Klay Thompson, he never improved anything. He came in as a spot-up shooter, and even though you have 4 championships, you're still a spot-up shooter. Versus someone who's like, okay, they might need me to do something else, and I need to have that skill set, I think was the last thing he said. Yeah. So that was in reference to, he was doing an interview or whatever with Xavier Tillman, the Memphis Grizzlies big man, and they were talking about Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane's having a great season. He's averaging over 25 points per game, obviously taking on much greater offensive responsibility without Ja Morant. And he's got a point to a sense, especially with that last thing, saying that they might need me to do something else and I need to have that skill set. What the Grizzlies need right now out of Desmond Bane is, yes, a lot more than what the Warriors ever needed out of Klay Thompson, because there hasn't been a 25-game stretch necessarily where Klay Thompson is playing without Steph Curry, or sometimes obviously back in that 3-year period, 17, 18, 19, he was playing with Kevin Durant. as well. So he was, to a degree, a spot-up shooter. But to say that Klay, spot-up shooter primarily, I should say, to say that he never improved anything, that is ridiculous. That is legitimately ridiculous. That is so wrong, so disrespectful, and I'm just mad about it. I'm mad and I'm sad that he said that, because that is just false. You are spreading a false narrative. Klay Thompson came into this league in his rookie year and averaged 12 points a game, and yet you're trying to make out what did he enter as an all-star? Like, he made 5 all-star teams. Did he come in as an all-star player? Did he? And just maintained at that level for a few years? No, he came into the league and he increased his scoring average in every year of his first 6 seasons. Increased scoring in each of his first 6 seasons in the league. Defensively, did he come in as one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA? Wouldn't have thought so. Developed to the point from his rookie year to pre-injuries, developed to the point where he was one of the best perimeter defenders, guarding the opposition's best guard on a nightly basis. And you know what? Fans watching games now would not know that, because Klay is an absolute shell of himself defensively. Of course he would be. He's gone through 2 of the most devastating leg injuries an athlete or anyone could ever have. Of course that's the case. But people are going to watch the game now thinking this guy's not a good defender. True. Doesn't mean he wasn't an elite defender prior to injuries. And for you to say, he never improved anything. He became, from his rookie year to, prime Klay years before injuries, became and developed into one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But no, it didn't improve anything. Increased his scoring average 6 seasons in a row. Didn't improve, though. Did not improve. Come on. And the other thing for me here is that you're building a narrative that is so unfair to Klay. And this is part of the issue with him now, is he would listen to this stuff. He listens to what Charles Barkley has to say, that he's not the player he once was. And that's fueling him and motivating to try and get back to that point where he was prior to his injuries, which is not what the Warriors need. Because, yes, truthfully, he's not that player anymore. He's not that player. Go watch Game 6 of the 2019 NBA Finals, the game where he tore his ACL. He had 30 points in less than 3 quarters. Go and see how many of those were spot-up catch-and-shoot attempts. Wasn't many. Had a tip-in layup. Got to the rim a few times off the dribble. Got to the free throw line a little bit. That's how he bloody got injured. Had a few pull-up mid-ranges, a few pull-up threes off the dribble. Spot-up shooters do not average 20-plus points in 7 different seasons. They don't. You do not have enough opportunity as a spot-up shooter to average that amount of points. You have to be able to do other stuff. And Klay Thompson could do other stuff prior to his injuries. He could. Hell, Klay Thompson last season could do other stuff. He had the 2 best scoring months of his career in January and February. Guess what? Without Steph Curry. The Warriors were 14-12 without Steph Curry last season, mainly because of, 1, Jordan Poole played pretty well, and 2, Klay Thompson took on greater offensive responsibility and averaged, again, the top 2 scoring months of his career. So, don't tell me, spot-up shooter and that's all he ever was. That is objectively wrong. And to say that he never improved anything is blatantly disrespectful. And it's also harming the current version of Klay, because he reads this or listens to this or whatever else and thinks, oh, geez, I really need, that fuels me, that motivates me to get back to what I was pre-injuries. And that's making his current game worse, I think. because he is trying to force things a little bit too much, because he's not accepting the fact that he isn't that player anymore. And instead of being an efficient 15 to 18 to 20 point per game player, he's trying to be that guy who can average 22, 23 points, who can do stuff off the dribble, who can try and get to the rim and stuff like that, which is not him. He should be, he should be a spot-up shooter right now at this point of his career. Okay? He should be. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have other stuff going for him prior to the injuries. And so you are painting an unfair picture, an untrue picture of what Klay Thompson was. Let alone the fact, just talk about Desmond Bane in a positive light. That's fine. That is perfectly fine. Do that. Why do you have to bring up Klay Thompson? It's just negative. It really is. It's just negative for no reason. It's taking a shot at an opposition player for no reason. Just objectively wrong. Anyway, I'm going to finish up there. I was just really sad about it. Warriors play the Phoenix Suns tomorrow. Obviously 2-0, the Suns are so far over the Warriors, and Bradley Beal is making his return. That means that we're going to see the debut of the Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal trio for the first time. Of course, comes against the Warriors. Of course. That's just the luck of the Warriors right now. Toughest schedule in the league so far this season, and then, of course, they get the debut of KD, Book, and Bradley Beal. Of course. Could actually work to their favor, I think, because I think this will, from a Suns perspective, I think this will take some time. I think it can be a really dangerous trio, but trying to work out the roles, how much time, how much of, how many of the possessions you're going to give to Bradley Beal in terms of putting the ball in his hands and getting him to make plays. I think it will take time. And so maybe the Warriors can play on that a little bit tomorrow, and tomorrow's matchup, and for any opponent that's coming up against the Suns in the next week or so, you're probably going to be better off with the ball being in Beal's hands a little bit more than Booker and KD, obviously. So we'll wait and see what happens. I'm optimistic. Always, try and take a glass half full approach. Try and be positive. The Warriors are playing some good basketball recently. They just cannot close games whatsoever. They cannot, and they're hurting themselves with turnovers, with dumb fouls like we saw from Draymond. Just is what it is at the moment, and they're going to have to try and get back on track here, try and build some momentum, obviously, because 10 and 12 opening is not where they want to be. Other than that, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, it would be greatly appreciated. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can follow me at POK252, that's POK252 on Twitter. Other than that, I'll probably have another episode after the Suns matchup. Hopefully the Warriors can get a win. Until next time, thank you.